Yeah, there we go.
Figure it out, Ed?
I got it.
All right, let's go, Ed. Before I
Before you.
Before I have a lapse of memory.
Yeah. I forgot. I forgot why I'm here.
Oh, Lord.
So,
So,
how you doing?
buttons on your underwear. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
I always start with the first question.
What is your first question?
Is tell me a little bit about the neighborhood that you grew up in.
The neighborhood I grew up in. Well, I remember 59th Street. I believe that we grew up on Sangamon.
On Sangamon.
I believe I was born in Inglewood Hospital, or I was born at home. How
can we
you'll
don't
have
know?
you'll have to ask who's responsible.
Okay, all right.
For that. But yes, but I do remember 59th Street very vividly.
And what was it like?
We lived above a Chinese laundroman.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when we were very young, and we used to go into the Chinese place. They used to iron with these irons, you know?
Right.
You understand? They had to heat them, put them on the stove. And we used to tease the Chinese men, and they used to get so angry at us that one of them chased Aunt Betty with an iron. She ran the steps were right next door, you know,
Right.
to the store. So she ran in, slammed the door shut, and she was frightened to death. She was holding that door, and he was hollering at her in Chinese. He must have been swearing at her in Chinese. Well, we did many, many, many things. But what I remember is playing in the prairie next door. There was a prairie next door. And there were a lot of weeds, you know, very tall weeds. And there was a factory. I don't remember the type of factory there was, but there were windows where the employees were able to look out. Well, I thought, well, gee, I'm going to water the flowers. So I went upstairs and got a enema bag.
That's innovative.
Right, and filled it with water, and brought it downstairs. I was watering the flowers. Well, pretty soon I looked around. These men were looking out of the window and laughing for all they could get, because I was watering these plants with the enema bag, you know.
Did you do that
So
on
I
a daily
remember
basis?
that very vividly. You know. Also, remember we used to have a playhouse.
What did you really?
Well, when I talk about a playhouse, I'm not saying a built playhouse. We used to play act. And we'd have boxes, you know,
Right.
clean up the backyard. It was all dirt,
Right.
no grass in the backyard.
So what role would you play and what role
Well,
would
I really don't remember.
You know.
But we used to make it up as we went along, you know, as children do, you know. Or we'd play store and say, well, and have a lot of fun that. We used to entertain ourselves quite well.
So what was like an average day of Ethel when you
Average day of Ethel?
Yeah, when you
I think when I was growing up, I was very quiet, and I'd love to make friends, but I found it very difficult.
Now, why is that?
Because I was away from home very often. I was ill, and for 2.5 years I was
Really?
away when I was quite young. So naturally, you know, you are in strange surroundings, and you feel strange.
Right.
And you're with people that you don't know, mostly adults.
Right.
So, and then many times I had to leave the house because of illness, you know, go someplace else. So I found it very difficult to make friends, and I was very unhappy
Yeah.
growing up.
Right. And this was what age when you were?
I think I was about maybe 6 or 7.
6 or 7.
Yeah. Yes, I remember that vividly.
Right.
I also remember when I was sick and had to be put away, sent away
Oh, really?
in the sanitarium.
Really? Was this tuberculosis? Or,
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
TB. That's right.
At that time,
Yeah.
they had no vaccines or anything like that.
So they had to quarantine.
And that was a
right?
terrible time because I remember my mother taking me there,
Yeah.
and I was in the hospital there, and she had to leave, and to leave without me. It was such a sad part. I cried and cried and cried and cried.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I didn't want her to leave me there
Yeah.
alone. That was a horrible time.
What was grandmother like? What did you have your memories of your
My
mother?
mother?
Yeah, your mother.
She was a wonderful woman.
Mm.
She was a wonderful woman. Like all children, you don't appreciate your parents until you're, what they go through and so forth. But very, worked very hard. Had a very hard life, extremely hard life. But we always had plenty of food. She always made food and saw there was food on the table. She's a wonderful cook.
What were meals like when you all gathered around for dinner? What was that like?
That was, we all sat around on the kitchen table. We had a large round kitchen table, one of those old-fashioned kitchen tables. And my mother made wonderful soup. Oh, and wonderful meals. I always loved what my mother made, particularly her bread. That was the best.
What type of bread did she make?
Collies,
Mm.
the best. I don't think anyone could outdo my mother when it came to that.
Mm-hmm.
She had these old pans that even had holes in them. They were so old on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
We had this big black stove,
Mm-hmm.
kitchen stove, with a big oven in the center there, cold stove, naturally. And she put all these breads. I remember she put egg on the top. She put all 5 loaves of bread in this big oven.
Mm.
And it's really delicious.
Did you
The
help?
house always smells so good.
Did you help your mom in the kitchen, or was that sort of
You
off
know, my
limits?
mother did. My mother made a great mistake. Because she did everything herself. That's where she made a big mistake. I think I grew up being selfish. Really. But we always had chores to do.
Mm.
My
Like
father,
what?
yeah.
Yeah, that's what
We
I-
all had chores to do. My father was very strict that way.
What was grandfather like?
Well, I don't know. He was an artistic man. I think he was. He married Grandma, my mother. When she came over, I think my mother was about 24. I don't remember how old my father was. Perhaps around the same age. He was a very egotistical man. He was within himself, and he loved astronomy. He loved beautiful music. Well, my mother did too. But naturally, my mother was so very, very busy with us children and household chores and a million other things that she wasn't able to show her ability like my father did. And he used to draw. But he was also very cruel. He didn't know too much about children. So he was a cruel man.
Mm.
Whether he knew better or not, I can't say.
Mm-hmm.
And
He was a traveling jewel salesman or something like that?
well, he wasn't a
Not
traveling man.
not a traveling man, but I mean
But he used to sell. At first, he was a taxi driver. it was very difficult making a living. We were very poor. And he starts selling jewelry. And I don't want to really talk about that too much because it's, I'd rather talk more of the present.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow.
Well, let me ask you a question. How did where was grandmother from? I mean, I'm always where was she from in Europe, and where was grandfather?
I think
how did they get here? And why did they
he
come
was
here?
he came over as a very young child. He grew up with his grandparents. He didn't grow up with his he grew up. He was staying at his grandparents, and then he went to live with I believe some relatives.
Here in the States, or was it still in
In the
Europe?
States. Yeah. My mother came over here. Well, I'm not clear. I'm just guessing from what I heard. She was born in Latvia or Lithuania. At that time, it was part of Russia.
Mm-hmm. I heard she went from there to England, because I hear we have family in England. I've never met them.
I don't know that she did.
Okay.
I do know that some of her brothers and sisters
Okay.
went to England.
Okay.
And some of her brothers and sisters she really didn't know because she came over here. And I don't think she stopped in England. She had a nephew that came here from England.
Okay.
His name was Max.
Mm-hmm.
He was a tall man, very tall, almost as tall as you.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very, very nice. Also, I remember, was it her cousin or was it her nephew? I believe it was her nephew. Looked a great deal like Grandma. A wonderful man. Really, and of course we were so young, you know. I'm trying to give you my impression of what I thought
Mm-hmm.
at that time.
I heard grandmother, when she came here, she had to work in a cigar factory when she first got here. I guess.
I don't know that you worked in a cigar factory. I really don't know that. I do know that her sister married a man, Reveal, his name was, and he used to make cigars.
Okay, maybe that's cool.
Yeah, he was quite well to do.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he had 13 children. He had 9 girls and 3 boys.
Wow.
Imagine that.
Wow.
Yeah. And he was really something else again.
In what way? You say something else?
Men in that era were very domineering.
Mm-hmm.
They had to say women were just you might call them their maids, concubines at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, well, as we grew older, my father became very more remote, and more dissension, you know, because of his inability to cope with us or we with him, you know. But I think it was very sad because I think he missed his vocation, which would have been more educational, more probably in the cultural side of things. And my mother also was a very fine woman. She taught herself. She was very intelligent, very compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, of course, we grew up, and our lives began, you know, and to develop.
Well, what was like when you were growing up? What was like Uncle Irving like? What were your memories of him
Uncle Irving?
when you were young? I mean,
Oh, well, he had a very hard life. My father was very cruel to him, extremely cruel, and didn't understand, I think, children or how to treat them. He would make him put the film around at 6 o'clock in the morning. He had to get up to pray. And my father, there was no companionship there, no camaraderie there, no love there.
now I heard that Uncle Irving went out to California. He left.
Oh well, that was much later.
That was much later?
You're talking after he's grown up and married.
Oh,
I'm
it?
talking about when he was a boy.
Okay, when he was a boy. Okay.
Would you like to hear that?
Oh yes, definitely. Oh yeah.
What?
No,
What
keep
would
on
you like to
going.
hear?
No, keep going. I wasn't sure because the history on my end is so blurry.
No,
But
that
he was that was later though. Okay.
That was much later.
Okay.
That he went to California.
So.
Well, anyway, my mother had a hard time. We used to skip school so much. She had to run after him. They'd say that he was truant, and when he had to go to Cheder, oh Lord, he'd skip that. Also, of course, at that time the rabbis were impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They too didn't know how to deal with boys. Of course, girls at that time didn't go to Hebrew school. No. Well, time went on. As I said, my father was quite cruel to him, and we, as children, were very frightened of him. When he would come up the house, we'd all scatter. We'd hide all over the place. But somehow he took to me the most. I don't know why. And he would we had a phonograph machine, and I was the only one who could play it. It's one of those wind-up things, And I remember your father. He'd have your father stand in front of this phonograph. He'd put a stick in his hand and make him lead the band. Because he wanted these things himself, you see, these cultural things. And therefore he'd make his children do these things. Well, anyhow, we all had our chores to do.
What was your chore?
I had to scrub down all the steps, and we all had to dust the furniture. And
whose job was that?
Dusting the furniture? I think I remember dusting furniture. But we always wanted a dog, an animal. So no matter, we'd always have a dog. That was the best. So one day I brought home a stray. I brought him, found him on the street, picked him up. I got on the streetcar with him, holding this great big dog who was bigger than me. And I remember the conductor. They used to have a conductor in back of the. Do you remember that? No, of course not. Streetcars. And it would cost 3 cents, 3 pennies to get on a streetcar. Well, I got on the streetcar with this dog. I was going to bring him home. I remember the conductor telling me to be careful about the dog. Well, anyway, I brought the dog home, and sometimes the dog would pee on the carpet. Well, we had some scattered rugs, you know, and if my father saw that, we'd really catch it. Really. Well, the dog did. Peed off the carpet, and we had a little scatter rug, and I took the scatter rug away from where it was, and to cover it up. Well, my father comes home, and he knows exactly where everything we should have done, and where everything was. And the scatter rug was in the wrong place. He picked it up to put it back where it should be, you know. And here he sees this spot. Well, that did it. At that time, I think he slapped me in the face. There are so many incidents I can talk about. It takes too long, really.
So did the dog stay or did the dog go?
That's not very interesting.
But did the dog stay or did the dog go?
That particular dog, of course, they would just go out of the house, you know, and go free and run around. I don't remember how long we had that dog,
Right.
but we did have one dog, that's Trixie, that stayed a long time. And when the dog was cold, that kitchen stove door was open, you know. He'd come in from outside and jump into the oven. Yeah, where it was warm, and he'd just lay in the oven there, keep him getting himself warm, and that was really amazing. It really was. Well, listen, with all the hardship and we didn't know any better. We accepted life as it was. Our mother and father, you know, the fights and the.
How did how did you get along with what was your relationship with Aunt Betty and Aunt Dorothy when you guys were young? I mean, cause you were the sisters, you know.
Yeah, we got along. We got along fine. We got along fine.
And
the only thing with me, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, that's all right. The only thing with me, as I said before, I was unhappy. Aunt Betty was happy-go-lucky, you know. When we sat around the table and my father would talk, she would start laughing. And she'd laugh, you know, and my father would I don't remember what he would say, but she would laugh. And of course I would tell her to be quiet, you know, for fear, you know, she'd get it. But we got along very well, you know.
And what was Aunt Dorothy like? I mean, what was her demeanor?
Aunt Dorothy was always a very compassionate person. She always, all through her life, she had. She felt a deep sorrow, and she felt a deep sorrow for others who were unhappy. And I think she became very angry within her. She grew up angry because she, being the eldest, she had more work thrown upon her, you know? Though, you know, I was away from home so often, I could only think about it. But I think she grew up quite angry. She was very artistic. When she grew older, she made these beautiful hats. That's where she and Aunt Betty worked, in a hat factory. They did piecework. Aunt Betty can really tell you some stories about that. You know, I can't, because I never worked like that. You know, I always try to work in better places if I could. You know. But
now, didn't Aunt Dorothy? Didn't she open up her own hat shop?
Yes,
eventually?
she did. Yes, she did. She opened up a hat shop on Sheridan Road. She had a small hat shop, and she made the most beautiful hats, all of her own design. But she couldn't keep it open, you know. The business wasn't there. But she put her everything into it, and she was so artistic, really. I miss her very much today, very much. But she was angry. It was difficult for her to talk without anger, to explain something. If she had to explain something, or she wanted to talk about something, it would be with anger, you know. And of course, I couldn't understand. I says, "Why can't you just talk to me, and you know, one-on-one, like, without getting angry?" Well, it was very difficult for her because she grew up angry because of the injustices when she was a younger child.
And what was Dad like? What was he when he was the youngest?
He was an adorable child, really. But he had no guidance from his father. Absolutely none. My mother was too harried and too busy to pay too much attention. Well, he grew up by himself, you might say, really. And being a child, you know, not knowing, he'd get into trouble. But in his most formative years, I really don't remember too much about your dad, you know. I only remember in his later years, when I start paying more attention to what was going on around me, you know. As a child, I was very unhappy, very quiet. I wanted to make friends, but I thought they were always. I found it very, very difficult.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, you moved, or the family moved from the south side of Chicago to the north side of Chicago. Is that true? I mean, you went from.
Well, that was many, many, many years later.
That was many years later. It was after you all had.
We had grown.
You had grown.
We had grown.
Because I thought you guys lived in Estes Avenue. I thought there was that whole.
That was many years later. We were all grown by then. In fact, I think we were married.
You were married. How did you meet Uncle Jack? I mean,
I worked in the same place.
Where did you?
Yeah, downtown on Wabash Avenue, in a printing house. Because he was an engraver. And that's where I met him.
How did you remember how you guys met? I mean, you remember
Well,
sort of
it just grew on us. You know, we just became attracted to each other. And it blossomed into love and marriage.
What was he like when you met him?
He was a wonderful person. He really was. Considerate. He was. He was thoughtful. He was really a wonderful man and very intelligent. Extremely intelligent man. I mean, it came natural with him. Intelligence and smartness was a natural thing. He was a smart person. He had a good brain. He had a good brain.
So, when you two were married, where did you live? Did you live in Chicago when you were married?
Yeah, we lived. When we got married, we lived at Hollywood and Bryn Mawr, right near the lake. Mm-hmm. A small apartment, furnished apartment. And from there, I was so naive and inexperienced because even when growing up, you know, I had no one to teach me, really. We grew up without, you might say, help. The only help we got was to clean the house or get hit by my father. But as far as knowing what is the right thing through in life, getting knowledge of life itself, we had to find out for ourselves.
Was when you found out things for yourself, was that difficult, or was it?
No, it wasn't difficult. But looking back, it was all wrong. Fortunately, we never got into trouble or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we certainly could have done much better, you know. Looking back, we made many, many mistakes. We all did, you know, looking back. These mistakes could have all been corrected if we had more training and parents who could have taught us, you know, differently.
When all of you were married, what was it like at that next stage of life when you guys were middle aged, you were all married and sort of starting your own lives? How did all of you sort of interact? I mean, how did it change in terms of how you interacted with one another, how the brothers and sisters interacted with you?
Well, we interacted well. We had our differences, you know. We quarreled. But we were brothers and sisters, and we always made up. We never stayed angry, you know, because we knew we were brothers and sisters, and that was the thing to do, you know. But then we married. We had our own lives, and naturally, we were. Our interests were within our own lives and families and so forth. But we could have, in our younger years, if we were taught differently. We were all intelligent, I think, enough to, you know, really make something of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But our younger lives were so difficult.
But it seems like all of you had, I mean, from my perspective, being, you know, the offspring, you all seem to have different personalities. You all seem to have sort of different, I mean, Dad seemed to be sort of like the, sort of the guy on the fringe. He seemed to just sort of do what he wanted. He
did, because he had no one to teach him,
right.
No one to tell him now. Only my mother. But she couldn't keep tabs on a wild boy, a young boy growing up, you know, like any young normal boy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They need someone to hold the reins on them.
Well, Dad used to tell me how he used to go and sneak into the old Science and Industry before it was all fixed up. He used to sneak in there with...
Sneak in where?
The Museum of Science and Industry. When
it
was all
the
boarded
Museum
up.
of Science and Industry.
He used to sneak in there when it was all boarded up. He used to sneak in
well,
with
naturally,
friends
as I said,
right. And run
of course,
around.
I don't remember all that.
Sure.
He's telling you things that
Right.
I wasn't,
Sure.
there
Right.
to see. But of course, as I say, he had.
What was he like as a young man? I mean, when he was like 18 or 19, when he was,
Well, his interests were, I think, in women.
That's
I believe that it's a normal, natural thing, but not having been trained that, there is a certain things that you do not do, or you stop someplace along the line. He had nothing. He didn't know from borscht. He just went ahead on his own merry way, But there again, without the proper training from young, he did many wrong things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It all starts out when you're very young. With the guidance, proper guidance.
Mm-hmm.
But here was a young man, a handsome young man, who had lots and lots of talent, but had no one to guide him. So he grew up to be a man, and he did what he thought he wanted to do. And he lacked the education, which was very, very important. But he and Uncle Irving were two very different people.
Were they close
Personalities.
or not really?
No, not, yeah, in later years they were, but your father was an entirely different personality, because of, again, of his upbringing. He loved horses, he loved animals of all types. And he really could have been quite a man. He really could have.
Well, what was it like during the war? I mean, the war years in Chicago. I mean,
War years?
Yeah. I mean, Dad went into the Army, and what did you?
I don't remember too much. I didn't even know when he joined the services, really. I think they took him in the Army, and I think he had a dog. They even let him have a dog. I think they figured him out, that he needed that companionship of a dog.
That's right, and I think when he went to India, I think he left the dog with your mother to take care of when he was away.
I had the dog too.
Yeah.
I had the dog.
Did you
Yeah,
too?
yeah. I had the dog. Richard and Michael were quite small, and I had him for a wonderful dog. But one day when I was lying on the couch, and Richard was sitting on the floor. Richard must have been about 2 or 3. The dog went up to him and was going to get him by the neck. I was lying on the couch. The dog changed his mind and went back. He had his mouth open. He was going to get him here. So I made your father take him back. Yeah. Right, I figured it was unsafe. Fortunately, I was there.
Mm-hmm.
But the dog never touched him after that.
Right.
Yeah, right.
So when you moved from Hollywood and Bryn Mawr, what was it? Where did you go after that? I mean,
We went to Greenleaf Avenue. Michael was born. Yeah. And then we moved to Greenleaf. We moved to Farwell. And from Farwell, Michael was then 3. We moved to Hamilton, Arthur.
Hamilton, Arthur.
And then Richard was born.
So what was it like having kids and sort of having a life of your own? How did that change you in certain ways? I mean,
well, when you say change, when you have a family, it's a natural change. You do what you have to do. It isn't something that all of a sudden is change. It's a gradual change, just like getting old. It's gradual. It was nice. It was a nice time.
what was
Very
like an
nice
average day of Ethel when you had your 2 kids and you married to Uncle Jack? What was sort of like an average day?
Well,
Then
an
something that
average
comes to
day
mind.
was very Uncle Jack was a wonderful father and loved his children and always made a living. Was a very caring father and husband. And I kept house. I was always cleaning. And I was always telling my children, keeping them clean and trying to teach them right from wrong, you know.
Did you feel stronger about that because of how you reflected about you were a child?
I taught my children
to...
because I was brought up a very strict way, regardless of what happened. My father was disciplinarian, and I think that some of that rubbed off on me. Not only that, but I was away from home, so away from that atmosphere. In my formative years. See, so my thoughts were just a bit different from my sisters, and my ways were just a bit different. I don't know whether it was good or bad, to be perfectly frank with you. But if you speak to Richard or Michael, I think they would say. I remember Michael particularly that we did a very good job. And I think as you see Richard and Michael today, it's part of their our teaching, part of their own way of thinking. You know, so I don't think we did too badly. And I really say that they had a wonderful father.
And a wonderful mother. Don't forget that.
Well, as far as it goes, who knows? I hope so.
Well, what were family get-togethers like when you all had kids? I mean, when you would all get together?
Oh, it would be wonderful. It would be wonderful if we all get together. Yeah. We'd many times go over Aunt Betty's house, cookouts, or my house. We kept together. We were a family. We knew it. And Uncle Irving was a very compassionate fellow, really. But sometimes you marry the wrong people, or you know, or well, you make your life. That's all. You do what you think you want to do, and your upbringing is the most important thing to your most adult life. And
but of course,
Adam.
but of course, now things have. What do you think now? I mean, now you have grandchildren, and you're
Who's answering the telephone?
I don't know.
Oh, should we get the telephone? Hello. Somebody.
No.
It's let's see whose telephone this is.
Are you
Oh, they stopped.
Yeah, we just got done.
They stopped. Oh, they stopped. They stopped. Too late.
Don't worry, they'll call back.
When you're done, you should run back and play it for a little bit.
No, but no, I was just sort of curious though, because we're
What?
not done. But was the whole thing about look now where you are now, and you have grandkids, and your kids are growing up, and I mean.
Well, right now, Adam, we are way up in years now. I miss Aunt Dorothy's gone, and I miss her dreadfully. In her later years, she became a wonderful artist.
Yeah.
Very surprising. She had no lessons, and here she was, what, 80, 79, 80, and she started painting, and you saw them.
Oh yeah, I did.
I think she had a wonderful sense of depth to her paintings. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm.
And proportions.
They were like Matisse paintings. in a way.
Really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm.
And she loved it. She, when she was ill, she said, "Do you think I'll ever get back to painting?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Of course you will, you know?" And to her dying days, she was an angry person.
Why do you think she kept all that anger? I mean, why?
When she was younger,
It really that made that quite of a.
she resented having to work so hard, and she had one unhappy marriage. She had a stillborn child, and when she was young, she was very unhappy. She had all this talent that was buried in her and never brought out.
Your dad was somewhat the same way. He had a lot of anger.
Exactly.
And of course, he was married twice, so he had an unhappy marriage.
Exactly. He was angry, and he not only that, he grew up thinking unreasonably. You know, and
Unreasonably in what way? I mean, just because of the lack of guidance.
unreasonably of bringing his own children up, not being able to cope with his own children because he didn't know how. And so it goes.
But it seems sort of funny now that we're, the offspring are older and they're having kids.
But as you look at each generation growing up, you see an improvement.
Do you?
Yes, definitely. There's an improvement. So you see, there's something in the genes there that are very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really a lot to be thankful for.
But it seems like that sense of family or even extended family, but family that seemed to be fairly solid.
Oh yes,
seems to
family.
be
Yes,
loosening.
a sense of that's true. A sense of family.
Because we're all over the place, we all have our own lives, and it seems like
but we
there's
still
nothing that's
feel family, right?
Yeah, no, we do. I agree. But I mean, I was just wondering
Our lives are different.
I mean, how does one keep that sense of family?
You
Extended family.
you keep it. You do. You keep it. It's not difficult
Mm-hmm.
to keep it. But I think today a sense of family is with the younger generation is very difficult because of divorces where fathers and mothers don't want to cope with things. They don't want to put themselves out, you know. Of course, fathers, in order to make a living, they both have to be away from home. But many women are away from home just to get away from home. And they should be with their children and teaching their children. It's wrong. Family life is the foundation of all life. So
If there's something.
there will be no real big catastrophe. We'll just keep going as a human race.
If there's that's an optimist. But if there's something that you could say to the family in terms of what to think about or thinking about this whole notion of family, what would you say?
I don't understand what you're saying.
I mean, if you could say something to the family in terms of the whole notion about family and about the whole notion of you're talking about sort of having that.
I just got through telling you,
Yeah.
family life is the most important thing
Yeah.
there is. It teaches you love. It teaches you respect. It teaches you everything a human being works and strives for. You can be a human being and be wild and unconcerned about others, but if you have a family and you care about each other, you're teaching each other love. You're teaching each other respect, and that's what it's all about. If you respect and have love, you will show it to others.
Mhm.
And it will grow and go on. Just like a young child is born and you try to develop it and teach it. If you start very, very young and teach this child that there are others besides itself, and you have love and respect for this person, you don't do wrong, and you try to guide this person through the formative years, this person will develop a personality of its own, yes, but with your help, I think, and to lead this person in the proper direction. Some, of course, will go in their own direction. Sometimes they'll make big mistakes. But on the whole, if you try as a parent, a human being, you'll be successful. And therefore, the coming generation will be successful. So
Well, I think that about does it.
okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Adam, dear.
Have a good trip tomorrow.
Oh, Adam, that's another story.
It's the beginning of a new story, right?
At the slate, yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah. I'm excited for you. I think it's